This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and the future has arrived, bringing good things for a change. Yay! This is the Asus ROG, pronounce it ROG or Republic of Gamers, whatever you want, Zephyrus G15 503. What is that? The 2021 edition of their 15.6-inch thin and light, kind of classy gaming laptop with NVIDIA RTX 3000 series graphics and AMD Ryzen Zen 3 Cezanne in here. And we've got the Ryzen 9 5900HS 8-core 16-thread CPU inside for a lot of performance in a thin package. How are the thermals and all that sort of thing? Oh wait, there's one more exciting thing before we even worry about that. This has a wide gamut QHD 2560 by 1440 display, which was NVIDIA's promise with the RTX 3000 graphics card, saying that that really is the new minimum. You know, if you want to play, you should enjoy your higher resolution. We've got that here too. We're going to look at it now. Well, you can tell I'm pretty excited by this laptop. While the RTX 3000 series gaming laptops, there aren't a lot of them out yet, but they haven't been as super exciting as desktop cards because they don't get as much performance improvement as the desktop cards, because the desktop cards got that performance boost by using more watts, more power, something you really can't do much of on laptops. It's sort of like the Intel principle for CPUs, and why Intel's gotten a little trouble lately. So here, speaking of that, we have AMD Ryzen, and that is a superior CPU right now in terms of using less heat, having better battery life, and wonderful performance in multi-core particularly, where Intel always edges out a little bit on single-core. The multi-core rocks. But that display, let's talk about that again. There is a QHD matte IPS 3 millisecond response time, 165 hertz wide gamut display here, and it's very natural looking. If you want OLED, you want the garish, you want the over-the-top. Actually, this isn't it. It's Pantone calibrated and it's pretty color accurate, but it's nice and it's sharp looking. I mean, whether you're going to play games and you want to see more details, for example, when I play Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I really enjoy that at higher resolutions because all those tree leaves, the details everywhere, it's a much prettier game. So that's a step in the right direction. And it's also sharp for everyday use. If you're doing photo editing, for example, great use for this laptop, or if you're just reading. And speaking of reading, and now a shout out to our sponsor, Blinkist. They bring you some of the best nonfiction works in 27 different categories and break them out into 15-minute bite-sized reads. Or in fact, you can listen to if you prefer listening as well. And topics cover things like finance, health, professional development, all of those sorts of things. Educational if you want, a little bit how to be a better person or a happier person if you want. In fact, after living through the great Texas blizzard of 2021, I was looking at some of the happiness-inducing topics and how to be more relaxed and all that sort of thing. So first I checked out the Happiness Lab shortcast, which is about what truly does bring you happiness in life. It might not be the stuff that you expected too. And then I read the Geography of Bliss about the world's happiest places, which might not have included Texas last week, but maybe we'll get back in there next week. I found the books not only informative, but relaxing too. The first 100 people to go to the URL in the description, Blinkist.com, Mobile Tech Review, are going to get unlimited access for 1 week to try it out for free. You'll also get 25% off if you want a full membership. And now, back to our video. In terms of build and where this machine sits in amongst the competition, the Zephyrus line is their ultra thin and light. It is one of the thinnest and lightest 15-inch gaming laptops. In fact, it weighs just a little bit less than not just the Razer Blade 15 Advanced, but the 16-inch MacBook Pro at 1.9 kilograms, which is 4.2 pounds. And quite thin, significantly under an inch, 19.9 millimeters. It has a magnesium alloy top and keyboard deck. The bottom, as far as I can tell, is ABS plastic on this, and it has the 8,000 dots on the lid. Instead of having the LEDs underneath as an optional thing like they did with the Zephyrus G14, they have a mylar film underneath. So when you move the lid back and forth, you'll see color shifting and sort of like having RGB lights without having RGB lights and without using any power and all that sort of thing. That is what it is. I think it's a very clean look. Obviously, this design here is very similar to last year's G14 Zephyrus model, which is one of the best gaming laptops for value and for what you got for the price, the looks, all that sort of thing. And again, this one is not super cheap, but for what you get, it's cheaper than the competition, and that's nice too. Our model is the Best Buy edition, is what we call it in the United States. It's $17.99. That gets you the Ryzen 9 5900HS, NVIDIA RTX 3070 graphics, the QHD display, 16 gigs of RAM, and a fast 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. Not too bad. Now, you could go up to a 3080 and double your RAM to 32 gigs while you're at, but that's like $700 more, and the performance gain just isn't that much, especially a thin and light chassis. So I would stick with the lower end model. So when you compare this to something like the Razer Blade 15 or 15 Advanced as a competition, or the MSI GS66 Stealth, which right now is just at full HD displays, by the way, there's no QHD option, it's hundreds of dollars cheaper, while still being pretty premium and focusing on the things that many of us care about the most, like the better quality display, the Ryzen CPU inside, that sort of thing. For the keyboard, you have single zone RGB backlighting. That means you can choose any color you want, but it's going to be all one color at a time. That's fine with me. There's no bling, there's no ROG Strix RGB body lighting anywhere. Again, with me, that's fine because I like the staid kind of modern and futuristic look, but at the same time, very chill design that's going on here. We have a very large Microsoft Precision trackpad on this. No number pad, which for a 15-inch laptop, personally, I like. That's up to you. Some of you need it, want it. Others don't like it. The keyboard on this has great feel. If you're a content creator who actually makes use of the written word, you're going to like this thing. It's also fine for gaming too, but a nice deep keystroke on this, tactile feel, springing back. It's like the good old days of keyboards without getting too thick. And it's quiet, unlike the ROG Strix Scar, which has an optio-mechanical sort of keyboard. This one is quiet. So within and light gaming laptops, some of the things that often take a hurt are the sound. Well, they've got 6 speakers on this, including force-canceling subwoofers or whatever. It sounds quite good. I'm still not sure it's as good as the 16-inch MacBook Pro, particularly for the depth of the bass, but compared to just about every other Windows laptop or gaming laptop in this size on the market, it sounds a lot better. And the multiple drivers combined with Dolby Atmos can give you the sense of surround sound that's very nice. Some people have said that they hear at high volumes the bass, particularly rumbling, farting, making funny sounds. Mine is not doing that. It sounds to me like that's probably a driver issue, but I don't know. Speaking of driver issues, this machine is on the bleeding edge, and out of the box 2 weeks ago, there were so many driver updates, firmware updates, BIOS updates. I've already gotten 2 BIOS updates. Be sure to actually run those updates, including the My Asus app for BIOS updates, because they do make a difference. When I first got it out of the box with the shipping BIOS, it did crazy, quacky things. Like sometimes it would say the charger wasn't plugged in right, which got me really worried. That was purely a BIOS thing, because they're working on USB-C 100-watt charging to get that going, which is not something that you're going to use when you're gaming, but if you need to use it as a productivity or a streaming laptop on the go, that will be sufficient. And Asus is supposedly going to sell a 100-watt power adapter that's USB-C based. So it's all sounding roses and puppy dogs so far. What about cooling? That probably sucks, right? Because it's thin and light. Well, no, thanks to Ryzen, which runs a lot cooler than Intel, which is your basic egg frying machine normally, your Intel laptop these days for a gaming one. In most games, I saw CPU temperatures for demanding AAA titles in the range of 80 to 84 degrees centigrade, which is way better than the near 100 degrees thermal throttling max that you'll see on the equivalent Intel CPUs for 10th generation. 11th aren't out yet, so for the 45 watters, so we can't say. For the 35 watt, Intel has started shipping their H35 watts, and this is considerably faster. Those are only 4-core on the Intel side for their 35 watt products, so, well, obvious reasons why there. I've been playing games like Cyberpunk 2077. Good job here. If you turn on ray tracing, of course, the frame rate's going to drop in most any game. I tested it with and without. Without ray tracing, I was in the mid-60s for frames, and that is playing at native 2560 resolution. So sweet that. DLSS will help improve things a bit for frame rates, but overall, and by the way, that was on the highest settings on Cyberpunk. Nice. So I compared that to my Alienware Area 51M R2, which has a desktop Intel Core i7-10700K and an RTX 2070 Super Max P, full wattage. And you know what? The Alienware had about 4 or 5 frames higher using the same settings, but it was only playing at 1080p resolution, which is the native resolution of the panel on that laptop. That's when I thought we actually are making progress. We might not be thrilled that the RTX 3000 isn't more than 15 to 18% faster than the RTX 2000s, but you look at this over the evolution of several years, and not for somebody who's going to upgrade from last year's laptop, but several years ago, and for something this thin and light, it's just madness. So what about surface temperatures and fan noise then? Surface temperatures are very good on this machine, actually. I was surprised. Of course, it helps that the CPU and the GPU are not killing themselves, though typically NVIDIA GPUs are capped at somewhere around 75 to 77 degrees centigrade. So there's that. But anyway, the only hot spot is dead center above the keyboard where you're not going to be touching it. I mean, ideally, you don't throttle this by putting it on a bed comforter, that sort of thing. But I had it on my knees, and it didn't cause me pain. The ventilation on this is on the bottom very specific. There are 2 cutouts for the fans, so try not to block those, by the way. Fan noise, well, this is still a thin and light gaming laptop. So when playing something like Cyberpunk 2077 or Far Cry 5, yeah, you'll hear the fans. They're not grating, annoying, whiny, or anything like that, but there's plenty of air being moved. I played most games in performance mode. You can play, which isn't the highest performance mode, despite the name, in Asus's Armory Crate software. There's Turbo, which is a notch up above that, and I would get about 3 frames per second more, 4, sometimes 5 at most. It also runs a bit hotter and a bit louder, not hugely. Or you can custom tune it yourself, which I like to see. So what about the GPU itself? This is a thin and light, so NVIDIA has done away with the Max Q, Max P thing, and I wish they hadn't, because we all understood what that meant, basically. So this is functionally a Max Q GPU. So it runs at 80 watts and boosts to 100 watts. So it's not as powerful as something like the MSI Leopard with the RTX graphics card 3070 that we reviewed. That's a full Max P. It's fair given how thin and light this is. And the performance on it is so darn good that I'm all right with it. That speaks to the RTX 3080, though. That has the same power limit, which is why I'm saying I wouldn't spend the money on that so much, because it's power constrained. Another thing some people won't be thrilled about, but I will give them a pass, because again, the Zephyrus is the thin and light ultra portable line. There is no mux switch. There's no way to switch hardware-wise over just to DGPU mode, which typically can get you 5 to 10 frames per second more in games, which is nothing to sneeze at, obviously. But the battery life on this and the temperatures are more of a concern, so they didn't go with that. Plus, we have an AMD Radeon integrated GPU, and it's running FreeSync, which is their version of G-Sync, sort of. So that's why they're running it through it. So if you're playing on the internal panel, you're going to have NVIDIA Optimus, basically. If you use the HDMI 2.0B port, it's still using NVIDIA Optimus. If you do want to go just DGPU mode only, use the USB-C port, which supports DisplayPort 1.4 out, and you can also get a USB-C to HDMI adapter. That one plugs straight into the dedicated GPU. With an external monitor, you can get max performance. So there's one little caveat there that's not super unusual for thin and light gaming laptops, that we have Optimus. The other one is the internals. There's nothing wrong with the internals. The design, the dual fan design, the number of heat pipes, like 6, is very good on this. We have not 1 but 2 M.2 SSD slots. These are PCI 3, no PCI 4 like the upcoming Intel 11th gen, alas. But we have what Asus has been doing for a while, which is 1 RAM slot and some RAM soldered on board. So the Best Buy 16 gig model has 8 gigs soldered on board, DDR4, 3200 megahertz, and 1 8 gig module. If you go for the RTX 3080 model with 32 gigs of RAM, you got 16 soldered on board and 1 16 gig module. So anything above what it ships with, so you get a 16 gig model. If, say, you decide to upgrade that 8 gig module to a 16, the first 16 gigs will still run in dual channel mode, but anything above 16 gigs will run in single channel. If you're running a game, probably that's okay. Just load your game first. It'll get the dual channel memory thing. But for those of you who are doing video editing and that sort of thing, where you can actually use more than 16 gigs, and possibly even more than 32 at times, then it could be a concern. And again, Asus has been doing this for years with the Zephyrus line. I kind of wish they wouldn't, but I suppose there's a trade-off between that and otherwise giving us a smaller battery or fewer ports or whatever it is. We all complain, they still do it. Again, the Asus ROG Strix does have 2 RAM slots for those of you who want that. It's about 1 pound heavier, more RGB bling on it, different kind of laptop, sort of. You get the idea. For Wi-Fi, we have Intel Wi-Fi 6 with Bluetooth 5. There is a fingerprint scanner that's embedded in the power button, and much like the Asus Zephyrus G15, it really doesn't work. Maybe 25% of the time it works for me. Oh well. So how about the competition? Basically, you're looking at spending significantly less money for some pretty cool stuff here, including the QHD display that may not even be an option in some of the competitors in the premium thin and light range. So that's the plus for this. The Ryzen is a plus. It's going to run cooler. It's going to have better battery life. Right? There's the Asus Strix and Strix Scar machines. Those are a bit bigger and heavier and more blingy, but well, they do get you things like 2 RAM slots. And however, pretty much those are just being sold with full HD displays right now, which is, There's the Alienware M15R4, which is their refresh with the RTX 3000 series graphics, and a bigger footprint machine. And if you think having half your RAM soldered on board, well, it's worse with Alienware. They're soldering all the RAM on board and the Wi-Fi card soldered. So, you know, there's a lot to be said for this machine right here. Then there's the Razer Blade, which is going to cost you more money and has perhaps the most boutique and cleanest looks. Hard to argue with that one. There's even a QHD display option. Again, you'll be spending more money for that one too. Port selection on the machine are excellent. We have USB-C 3.2 Gen 2, which means you got DisplayPort 1.4, you got power in and out, and no Thunderbolt because, well, that's an Intel intellectual property. We have 2 USB-A 3.2 Gen 2 ports, HDMI 2.0B wired directly to the integrated GPU. We have a gigabit Ethernet port. We have a micro SD card slot, and of course a headphone jack on board too. So not bad about it. The only thing missing is a DisplayPort, but you can get that via USB-C. So battery life, well, AMD Ryzen, that starts to say it all, doesn't it? Plus the fact we have a large 90 watt-hour battery inside. Not quite as high as the MSI GS66 Stealth with its 99.9 watt-hour battery, but still very good. And Ryzen is so power frugal that if you're doing productivity work, streaming video, a little bit of Photoshop, that sort of thing, you can expect anywhere from 6 to 9 hours of battery runtime on this, which is absolutely superb. Of course, it's going to be running on the integrated GPU, and you can actually control that sort of with the Asus Army Crate software. They don't explain it really well, but there's that. So for a gaming laptop, insane. The charger is also, relatively speaking, very light and fairly compact. It's a 200-watt charger that comes in a lot lighter than the competition with this, which lightens your load, which means that your super light laptop doesn't suddenly become super heavy because you've got this humongous and heavy charger going along with it. Those quoted runtimes are with AMD's Very Bright option turned off in the AMD Radeon software. Do go there and do turn that off. It really doesn't help battery life much, but it does reduce not just the overall brightness of the display when it's unplugged, but it reduces the color gamut too. And after you remove the rubber plugs and unscrew the screws, it's pretty easy to work this off. Really, you don't have to fight too much with a guitar pick or anything, just a little bit. And here are internals, 90 watt-hour battery, nice and big for a thin and light gaming laptop. I'm glad we're starting to see this happen more often. Here are 2 of the 6 speaker drivers. That's a lot of speakers for a 15-inch laptop. That's why the sound is pretty good. Again, I haven't noticed any bass distortion on ours, which is probably a software-based issue if you're experiencing it. Here's the M.2 NVMe SSD. Ours is a 1 terabyte SK Hynix, and you have a second slot to add a second SSD if you would like to. Right there's the screw to retain it, and that's where you would plug it in. Here's our single RAM slot. That is a ding against Asus. They keep doing this to make it smaller. They solder some of the RAM on the motherboard. So we have the 16 gig model from Best Buy. So we have 8 gigs soldered on board and an 8 gig 3200 megahertz DDR4 RAM right here. And you could obviously upgrade it. You would only have dual channel memory up to that 16 gigs worth, and anything after 16 gigs wouldn't be dual channel anymore. I don't know, most games, you know, they don't use more than 16 gigs, so you're pretty safe for things like gaming. Our socketed Wi-Fi card is here with Bluetooth. That's the Intel Wi-Fi 6 AX201 card. And obviously the fans are right here and a whole lot of heat pipe action, which is good to see. This is a 3-screw heatsink here, but hey, it's on pretty well. And again, they use liquid metal for the CPU, so that's very effective for cooling. Might make it a little bit harder to get it off afterwards, and we do have 4-screw mounts here for the CPU, which is a good thing to see. So that's the Asus Republic of Gamers Zephyrus G15 Model 503 for 2021 with NVIDIA RTX 3000 series graphics and AMD Zen 3 CPUs inside Go Ryzen. So you can tell I like this laptop a lot. It's not perfect. Obviously, I would like to see things like 2 RAM slots, maybe the HDMI port hooked directly up to the DGPU. But honestly, for the price, a thin and light, classy-looking gaming laptop like this with great battery life, a QHD display that's wide gamut and high refresh rate, and it can play any AAA title at 2K resolution around 60 frames per second, if not higher. I mean, what's not to like about that stuff, right? I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.